Hi and welcome to MicroStrategy. My name is Michael Hoffmann and I'm working as a senior sales engineer for MicroStrategy Germany. With this video, I want to show you how you can use MicroStrategy for challenging reporting projects where we need to combine automated reporting processes with flexible commenting and approval workflows. MicroStrategy can do a lot more than just business intelligence. The unified platform is so powerful that you can combine business intelligence functionality with transactional processes. I want to show you live how this works and how you can develop these demanding applications without coding, based to 100% on the same MicroStrategy platform. Starting point for our implementation scenario is an extensive corporate management framework for business intelligence purposes. This framework provides apps for web and mobile, and you can see some of the use cases of this modular solution shown as icons here on the slide. One icon stands for the corporate report that needs to be created automatically based on a workflow with commenting and approval capabilities every single reporting period. Each page of the overall corporate report has commenting fields, and the status of a field can change during the workflow processes. Different people in different roles can play a part in this workflow. Comments can refer to a single grid or graph on a report page, but some of them are data-driven by regions as well. That means that we have a combined metadata model that links reporting data to commenting data with a central security on top of it at the same time. And now let's start with the final version of the corporate report we want to generate automatically with our workflow. Every single reporting period, in our example it's the month, the workflow has to start again, and when the final approval of the overall process is done, the report can be made available for the recipients. We don't want any manual efforts in our process, and this means we have to handle all steps with a data-driven approach based on a relational data model. The beauty of our approach is the fact that we combine reporting capabilities seamlessly with data-driven workflows based on transactions. This means that a workflow user can see a preview of the final report together with workflow forms on the same virtual report page. There is no break in the front end because all the functionality comes from MicroStrategy without the need for programming tasks. One of our most important requirements is the combination of web and mobile front ends at the same time, but not only for the reporting but also for the workflow tasks. You saw right now that our final corporate report is available on a mobile device as well. You'll see later that this is true for the workflow as well. Okay, after this short introduction, we will start with the first element of our commenting and approval workflow. It's the reporting period overview dashboard, and this dashboard is integrated in the overall solution framework. The dashboard lists all reporting periods and their workflow status in combination with the final workflow approver and approval timestamp. The menu is dynamic and leads to the final report preview on the one hand, or the workflow monitor that is related to the selected reporting period on the other hand. Each reporting period has its own workflow status and its corresponding commenting and approval items that are linked to single report pages and their reporting data at the same time. We can start the workflow for a selected reporting period in this dashboard. The first step is the preparation phase that indicates that the workflow for this reporting period will start soon. The next phase is the running phase that leads us to the corresponding workflow monitor. Within this workflow monitor, we can dive into single tasks for commenting, updating, rejecting, and approving items. The workflow monitor gives us the status of the overall process. A traffic light to the right indicates the same status. When the status of the overall process has been changed, the user who changed the status as well as a timestamp is written back to the database. The overview sheet outlines the single reporting pages, including their status, that define the overall corporate report for the selected reporting period. The other sheets are linked to these single reporting pages and give us more details about the commenting and approval process. An important functionality is the archive or history of commenting and approval items. Each time an item is updated, this update is written back to the history tables of the underlying database as well. With that, we can make a deep dive into the whole process at a given time. A preview of the corresponding reporting page is also available. The preview can be started from each sheet. Because of the fact that the November 2016 workflow is already approved, we can't step into the commenting or approval phase of a single reporting item. That is indicated by the yellow button. But we will do this for the December 2016 report later. The third page on our final corporate report is a little bit special, because in addition to the main comment on this page, it provides extra comments that are linked to data items in our data warehouse. In this case, regions are linked directly to commenting objects. You will see later that we do not distinguish between different data models for reporting, commenting, and approval processes. The models are combined into one single metadata that can use multi-source capabilities as well, and this provides an extreme flexibility in regards to the development of data-driven transactional solutions. And now it's time to fill our workflow for December 2016 with live. On the reporting period overview dashboard, we start with a quick check of the final report preview, so that we can prove that there are no comments at all. In the next step, we enter the workflow monitor for December 2016 and start the commenting process for the first report page, which is the corporate overview. Hey, this looks like a typical report page, doesn't it? But be careful, it's much more. This page is enabled for commenting by using MicroStrategy's transaction services that can be seamlessly combined with all the other powerful capabilities of MicroStrategy within MicroStrategy documents. Please don't think that what you see is a standard approach. This kind of implementation is just my own invention, and with the power of transaction services you can design whatever you like in order to implement your processes. The beauty of this approach is the seamless combination of reporting and transactional capabilities at the same time, without any breaks in the front end. But this approach goes much deeper. The power of MicroStrategy is a unified metadata layer that describes all reporting entities in a single version of the truth approach. Our commenting and approval process is part of this unified metadata layer as well. All solution elements can even share the same columns in the same tables in the same data warehouse, or in different ones, by using multi-source capabilities at the same time, regardless of the reporting or commenting items we are looking at. In my example, I changed the status from a reporting item from entered to rejected. When I designed the process, I thought that rejections can play an important role in the overall workflow. Therefore, I enhanced my lookup table for the status of reporting items in that way and interpreted this additional element in my workflow. It's as I said before, you can invent your own process, and in order to do so, you can think about your own data structure that is able to drive your workflow. You can invent your own history mechanism in the same way as I did. We will take a closer look at data structures and modeling approaches later. At this point, we have approved all commenting items from the first reporting page of our corporate report for December 2016. When we look into our history list, we can see a recording of every single commenting step. These history items are written back into the database during our workflow. History items are modeled as MicroStrategy attributes as well, and therefore we can show them in any kind of visualization within the MicroStrategy platform. There's one key attribute that provides the main link between reporting facts and commenting items. It's the reporting period, and it's modeled within MicroStrategy as an attribute called month. The ID column of this attribute is the link between the hard facts of the reporting figures and the soft facts from the commenting process. We will take a closer look at the underlying tables of our database later in order to see where the columns are used in our scenario. In the meantime, we approved our commenting items for the second reporting page in a summary procedure, so we can go on to the third reporting page with its special commenting items. On reporting page 3, we have one standard overall comment, but also additional comments that are linked to regions. These regions are attribute elements that are used for reporting visualizations as well. This is a good example for data-driven comments that are linked to reporting data. This approach provides you with the capability to join regional facts with regional comments whenever you like, and even in ad hoc and self-service business intelligence scenarios. When you create comments, you can distinguish between different levels of data linking. On the highest level, a comment is linked to the overall report. On the second level, a comment is linked to a specific report page or visualization on that page. On the third level, a comment is linked to an attribute element that is used for visualizations of key figures at the same time. And on the fourth layer, a comment is linked to a key figure that is calculated on a specific level of aggregation within your grid or graph. This last option is also called cell-based annotation, and it's a very powerful approach to comment on specific cells of calculation in your reports, because these comments are linked directly to metrics and their level of aggregation. We will take a closer look at this option later. And now we can make a short break, because all our reporting items for the corporate report are approved in the meantime. Well done. But our overall workflow is not yet approved. For my workflow, there's a difference between the approval of reporting items and their comments on the one hand and the overall workflow on the other hand. So we will do this in the next step. I defined a relationship between a reporting period and the corresponding reporting items that have to be approved. But before we approve the reporting period December 2016 completely, we take a last look at the preview of the final corporate report that is ready for distribution. And now we want to approve the whole workflow for reporting period December 2016. The logic works in that way that if all the reporting items with their comments are approved, the overall reporting period workflow can change its status. This can be done by using a dynamic button that becomes visible after all reporting items have been approved. At the same time, the workflow freezes the status of all reporting items that belong to the selected reporting period. The yellow button indicates that the workflow can't change the status of reporting items anymore. This functionality is deactivated by now. In my example, the overall workflow can have two final states: completed and approved. And now let's take a look at the same workflow management, commenting and approval capabilities on a mobile device. MicroStrategy is the leader of mobile business intelligence and provides native apps for tablets and smartphones. Applications can run as a native app, including offline capabilities for analytics and transactions at the same time. This means that MicroStrategy provides even the flexibility to run parts of our workflow offline on a mobile device. The beauty of this approach is the fact that you don't have to develop different applications for web and mobile front ends. I developed the front-end objects called MicroStrategy documents only once and used them in web and mobile at the same time. If you need to distinguish between different screen resolutions, you can use an additional functionality called mobile views. With mobile views, the solution can be adjusted for different screen resolutions without the need to implement the logic and front-end twice. For my solution, I choose the pixel-perfect, highly formatted design, but you can use a responsive design approach for visualizations as well if you like. This is often the case if you implement ad hoc and self-service solutions within minutes when you don't want to spend much time on a pixel-perfect design that is highly formatted at the same time. At this point, you might think that my examples are not complete because I worked as a power user all the time. I was not limited in functionality during my workflow. I was only limited by the overall rules of the workflow management framework I implemented, and I was able to see all the details at any time. But how can a front end look like for a limited user who is limited in regards to functionality, workflow influence, and data? This is the part of my next demonstration. It didn't take me much effort to implement this limited front end based on the existing workflow framework. Okay, so let's enter the dedicated front end for a limited user as an example. The workflow hasn't started yet, therefore this user gets the information to wait until the workflow starts. In the next step, I'm going to start the workflow, and we take a closer look at the limited front end for the limited user. In my example, I integrated the limited front end directly into the reporting process overview dashboard. This is just for demonstration. Otherwise, I would need to change my logon several times during this presentation. What you see here is a dynamic menu in regards to limited action items for our limited user. This menu is data-driven. It outlines the reporting pages we can work with, and it tells us about the action types we can execute. It seems we can comment on each reporting item on each reporting page, but we are not allowed to approve anything. In addition to commenting and updating, we can also reject items on report page 2, but not for the other pages. Moreover, we are able to check the preview of all reporting pages. So how does this work? I will explain the details now. As I mentioned before, the menu is data-driven. This means that reporting pages and the capability to comment on them are linked to single MicroStrategy documents. Each document has a unique document ID. This document ID is saved to a database table, and therefore each document is modeled as a so-called user menu item in my MicroStrategy metadata layer. From the perspective of MicroStrategy, it's just data, and therefore we can use all the great standard security mechanisms of MicroStrategy in order to limit the access to these objects by security filters and access control lists. If the workflow framework is ready, the configuration of these security settings is done within minutes for specific workflow users with limited access rights. Moreover, I'm using the same mechanism for the limitation of action items in regards to the status of different workflow objects. In my example, the user can't approve anything. A security filter limits this functionality for my dedicated user. If we jump into our workflow monitor again, we can see the output of this user. As a power user, I'm able to approve items directly in the workflow monitor. I would do so because I want to show you that the menu of the limited user is dynamic and hides menu items automatically if the workflow doesn't need the support from this user for the dedicated workflow items anymore. You can see now that the product performance report page is not accessible anymore for our limited user. The user can only concentrate on the still open action items, and he can work with the team side by side together as part of the overall workflow that is dedicated to a specific reporting period. In our case, it's December 2016. During our workflow, we will approve all the other reporting pages, and these approvals will limit the leftover action items for our limited user again. At the end, no menu items will be left over, and this means that the workflow has been finished for our limited user. At this point, I want to address the importance of the underlying metadata layer and the schema of our database again. It's up to the customer to invent his own workflow framework. The details of this framework can almost be unlimited. The whole framework works data-driven, and this means that we need relational tables in a database that address the data items we need in order to manage the workflow. Lookup tables for different status types, as an example, are needed as well. You will see some examples later. Let's assume we have a non-relational database source like SAP Business Warehouse for key figures and reporting data in our scenario. How would this approach work in this case? No problem, because MicroStrategy can link this non-relational database to a relational database that holds the comments or action items for our workflow and combines these sources by using multi-source capabilities. And even if you don't have a relational database for commenting purposes at all, MicroStrategy is able to use web services in order to write back data into external systems. But the effort is higher compared to a relational database approach. If you followed the live presentation, all reporting pages are approved now, and we can take a final look at the limited user front end. You will see that our limited user has nothing more to do than take a coffee. Before I show you some special implementations of commenting scenarios at the end of this video, we'll take a quick look at the implementation part of the solution you saw right now. Let's start with the database. In my scenario, I used a MySQL database that holds the reporting tables on the one hand, and on the other hand all the tables needed for our workflow scenario. I will step through these tables and show you some details. Before you can set up this kind of scenario, you must think about a unique entity that is responsible for the link between the hard reporting facts and the soft commenting and approval facts. Typically, this is a kind of time attribute. In my case, it's the month because we want to generate corporate reports for each month with our solution. In the next step, you have to think about the reporting items you want to comment on and approve later. Some of these items won't have links to reporting data elements like regions or product categories. As an example, I used some reporting page items where their comments are only linked to specific grids and graphs on the report page. On the other hand, you must think about comments that are linked to reporting data directly. This is shown on my third report page and stands for comments that are linked to regions. In order to reflect these different scenarios, you need to set up your workflow tables and underlying database so you can make your workflow driven by data. You saw some of these tables and their structures right now. If you want to implement a dynamic action item menu for dedicated users, you need to define a table that describes these menu items, including the unique document ID for the related MicroStrategy front-end document. The links to these documents are secured by security filters later, and you don't need to define these links hard-coded in your database table. And now I want to give you a personal recommendation where to define your transactions and how to handle them, although it's possible that you define the SQL for your transactions that are part of your workflow directly within MicroStrategy transaction reports. There's a much more powerful approach that provides you even more flexibility, and it's perfect if you need to define high complex transactions based on rules, etc. So I would recommend to use store procedures directly in the database. These store procedures are controlled by parameters. Within MicroStrategy, the front end calls these store procedures directly and hands over the needed parameters. Store procedures are extremely powerful, and the usage of them within MicroStrategy is extremely easy. It's just a call function with the needed parameters. If you develop a workflow scenario, it's often useful to reset the whole story with the click of a button. You can put this procedure in a store procedure as well. You can run this with a dummy parameter as a MicroStrategy transaction. I combined this with my solution on the starting page for our workflow. And now let's take a quick look at the metadata model in MicroStrategy. As I mentioned before, the reporting and workflow model are combined into one single metadata solution. The central object is the month attribute that links the reporting facts with the commenting and approval scenarios. In addition to this, we have several attribute groups that belong to workflow objects. We can distinguish between 4 different attribute groups. The reporting page items that are linked to grids and graphs on specific report pages. The reporting page item history objects that archive reporting page items. The reporting page sub-items that are linked to regions directly on the third report page, and the reporting periods itself. One additional special attribute group defines the attributes for the dynamic user menu that needs to be secured centrally by a data-driven approach. If we take a look at the structure of our solution, we realize that the reporting automation workflow is just a single use case in a set of use cases that comprise the whole solution named Corporate Navigator. In order to manage such a modular solution effectively, we need to define a corresponding folder structure with dedicated MicroStrategy documents that are linked to each other by handing over parameters to achieve an intelligent application flow. An important aspect of our solution is modularity. Modularity is the key for managing complexity within demanding solutions. And at the same time, this modularity is the key for an effective growth and change of the solution over time. With MicroStrategy, you can achieve exactly this goal by using dedicated single documents and linking them dynamically together to an application network. I'll show you what this means. I'm in the standard MicroStrategy folder structure in a web browser now. Each module or use case of the application framework has its own dedicated folder and application documents. You can run such a module directly by running the related document. But this is not the way the overall application framework would work at the end. An intelligent, dynamic menu structure puts all these single modules together and is able to hand over user context information between different MicroStrategy documents, while the user is navigating through these use cases in one flow. I choose this approach for the complete solution framework as well as the report automation workflow module itself. At this point, I want to finish the main part of my presentation. And I'll go on with two specific challenges in the space of commenting scenarios. The first challenge addresses commenting capabilities, including formatting and a powerful JavaScript editor. The second challenge addresses cell-based annotations, where comments are linked to dedicated metrics that are calculated on specific aggregation levels. This is the most demanding way to capture comments in reporting scenarios. What you see here is a menu for the selection of a reporting period. If I select a month, the corresponding reporting page comes up and provides me the capability to enter a comment. In contrast to what you've seen before, we have the additional functionality to format our comments effectively by using a powerful JavaScript editor. This is not a standard capability of MicroStrategy, but I was able to enhance the standards with a little bit web programming techniques. I programmed a template commenting page including a free-of-charge JavaScript editor based on .NET and C#. You can do this with Java as well. This template can be used easily within MicroStrategy documents. MicroStrategy provides a container control in order to combine these external components with the MicroStrategy solution. If you've done this once, you can use this template for different commenting scenarios as well. MicroStrategy controls the external component with URL parameters. This is easy and effective. And now my last example covers a special use case that can be very demanding. It's about cell-based annotations, where you want to comment on metrics that are calculated on specific levels of aggregation. The scenario is more complex because if you write back a comment on the metric, you need to write back the context in which this metric was aggregated as well. This context is described by the combination of attribute IDs that are part of the metric calculation in dedicated grid or graph. You can describe this context as a compound key, and you need to enhance your commenting table in that way that it can store this compound key value together with the comment itself. Once understood, this approach is easy to implement as well, but your metadata objects have more multi-mapping references into the commenting tables. The beauty of this approach is the additional flexibility that you can analyze your comments on the combination of each level of aggregation individually. This is a kind of business intelligence about comments linked to specific metric calculations. Quite cool and much more intelligent than comments in Excel cells. And now I want to thank you for your interest in the capabilities of MicroStrategy. I think you saw that MicroStrategy provides an extreme functional richness that can go far beyond standard business intelligence requirements. This unified platform is a chameleon, and you can bring in your creativity to invent your own solutions effectively. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thanks for your attention. I wish you all the best. Bye.